he knows that he's got to get this team into the top four this season. Now, I was talking to someone last week who knows him well, who's spoken to Pep quite a lot recently, and he was saying that they're viewing this as a season of survival, really. Just get into that top four, and then we can start rebuilding the squad.
This is a clip from the latest episode of the Game Football podcast from The Times. To listen to the full show, go to wherever you get your podcasts.
But thankfully, while we wait for Tom, we have the perfect deputy as Paul Hirst joins us down the line from Manchester to discuss the derby. Hirsty, hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, mate, good. Now, I wanted so many things to discuss. As I said, a remarkable game. Remarkable, let's be honest, for how crap it was. I could not believe it watching this game. Honestly, I've seen more quality in League One at a Lincoln match. But I wanted to ask you first, as I always like to do with all you guys when you were at games, about the atmosphere. Because I felt like that even came through on the telly, that in the Etihad, both before City scored and even after they'd scored, there was the perfect kind of symbol for what a difficult time this club is in at the minute, is just how nervous the Etihad seemed at all times.
Yeah, it started off really positively. Like, they unveiled 3 banners in the stadium, one of them a giant one of Pep, and then another couple poking fun at United, saying you'll never win 4 titles in a row, and there's a light show as well, which, you know, I'm a bit partial to secretly. And then it all started off really positively, you know, and I just thought if City get a goal in the first 10 minutes here, they could really bulldoze United. But then I thought, you know, that is the City of old. You know, we don't see that from the current Man City team. So you're right, the nervousness kicked in quite early on. I just felt that they were just passing it along the back four quite slowly, City, and moving it around very, you know, just give it to someone else, they'll do something with it. You know, it was that kind of mantra, and you just saw so many simple errors. You know, like De Bruyne not beating the first man with his crosses, and Gundogan not, losing possession. Just these kind of mistakes just never used to happen. It always used to be so fluid with Man City, so fluent. But now they just don't have that in their locker. They seem really nervous, really edgy. And Pep said that after the match. He said they were really anxious. And for a team that's won so many trophies under him, to suddenly collapse like this in terms of their confidence and their quality and their skill is remarkable, really. And even when they went 1-0 up, no one really thought, they'll kick on now, because they've been so steady in the first sort of half an hour and not really very adventurous. I thought, well, they're just going to probably try and see it play it out for a 1-0 win. And, you know, that is so un-Guardiola-like, but he would have taken it, obviously. And then, you know, at the end, it was just chaos, really. They're prone to a collapse. When they concede a goal, it always looks as if the next attack is going to result in another goal going in. They're just so weak at the back at the moment and in midfield. If United have, you know, probably played another 5 minutes, they've probably scored another goal. The City were that weak, that vulnerable. It just summed up, that game summed up City, where City are at the moment.
Hirsty, can I ask you, it might sound a silly question, actually it's really important. How are you as a journalist coping? Because all you've done is had to write about the magnificence of Manchester City, and you've known what to expect when you see them. Have you adapted really quickly to the new normal that City are rubbish?
Well, luckily, Man United have been rubbish for the last 10 years. So I've just switched, you know, I've just changed the word City, United to City in the intro. It is really bizarre. It's so strange. Just, there are kind of parallels about how United have been. I know it's a bit flippant me saying that, but there are so many problems that City are facing now that United have faced in the last few years. You know, the need for a revamp of the squad, aging players losing confidence, and the manager losing confidence as well. So yeah, there are parallels there, but it's very, very strange. Just writing about City and talking about them like that at the moment. And obviously you've got to remind yourself in the back of your head that Pep Guardiola is one of the greatest managers of all time, and he's won so many trophies for City, so he's got so much credit in the bank. But he won't be. He's not bothered about that. He knows that he's got to get this team into the top 4 this season. Now, I was talking to someone last week who knows him well, who's spoken to Pep quite a lot recently, and he was saying that they're viewing this as a season of survival, really. Just get into that top 4, and then we can start rebuilding the squad because they've got enough money to do it. You know, they sell a lot of players. The accounts came out last week showed that over the last 2 years, I think they've made about 250 million in profit in sales, and that's excluding the likes of Julian Alvarez. So there's more to come as well. There's plenty in the bank. They've just got to spend it very wisely because it is going to be I think it's going to be a really big summer ahead for them.
Hirsty, I'm going to come back and ask you one final question on Guardiola in a second, but I wanted to ask about Rubin Amorim and Manchester United. A huge win for them. As you said in your kind of assessment of the game, didn't necessarily look like United were going to win. On another day, another team might have taken the game to City far more, but they are also struggling with confidence. I wanted to ask you about Marcus Rashford, Alejandro Garnacho left out of the squad for this game. Rubin Amorim talking very interestingly, both on television and in the press conferences that we discussed yesterday, about this decision. Talk to us a little bit about that and what this says about his early time at Manchester United.
Well, just to give the listeners a rundown of what he said in the press conference, he said it's not a disciplinary thing. It's about the performance in training. It's about performance in games, the way that you dress, the way that you eat, the way that you engage with your teammates, and the way you push with your teammates. When people in our club are losing their jobs, we've got to set our standards really high. So that, to me, is Amorim laying down the law. He clearly hadn't seen what he'd liked from Rashford and Garnacho in training, in terms of their body language, in terms of their relationship with the other players in the squad, and he just said, right, he got them in training on Sunday morning at the training ground. They were training there while the rest of the team were going to play a derby, and especially with someone like Marcus Rashford, a homegrown kid.
Yeah, who's had so many great moments in derbies as well.
Amazing, amazing performances and goals, and ending Martin Di Michelis's career in one game at the Etihad, and I just remember that is an outstanding kind of memory of Manchester derbies in the last decade or so. But he just wasn't part of it. But Amorim is very clever. He's such we spoke about this before, haven't we? About how he's really charming guy. He's very in press conferences in particular. He knows how to praise players and knows how to G them up. But he's also got a ruthless side to him. And if you are not at the levels that he thinks you should be, then he won't waste any time with you. You're out, you're gone. So that is and he's done it. He's very cleverly done it now when he's got a lot of credit in the bank. Not many people expected him to win on Sunday, so even if they lost, it would have been, so what? It doesn't matter. It's important that he's laying down this. He's setting the expectations out for the players. So it's a really bold and really, really clever move, and it paid off.
Yeah, and as Charlotte, our colleague, was writing on the Times website today, it made it all the worse probably for Marcus Rashford and Garnacho that Amad Diallo is the star of the show. Just embodying a lot of the things that Rubin Amorim wants: enthusiasm, drive, energy, running like mad dogs, I think he said in a recent press conference, didn't he? His emergence in this game, it spoke everything about what he's trying to do and what the other players aren't giving him.
Yeah, and it's been a great season for Amad. I remember when they put him up for a press conference in pre-season when Ronaldo was United in America. He kept talking about how he wanted to be a regular, and I was just thinking, where do you really fit in? You're not as good as Rashford, you're not as good as Garnacho, but then it's his work rate, it's his enthusiasm, it's his dedication to the profession that has got him into the team, and he's justified his selection at the moment, whether that's at wing back or on the wing. And Van Nistelrooy was saying when he was in temporary charge that Amad always stops and asks for extra training. Can I work on my headers? Can I work on my crossing? Can I work on my finishing? And when someone's doing that, then you've got to give him a place in your team, because otherwise, if you don't, then he becomes disheartened, and then the other players look at that and say, well, Ahmad's working his, running around and doing everything that he can to get in the team, and he's not getting a place in the side. So you've got to give him a go, and he's justified that selection, with his performances.
Yeah, Rubin Amorim proving why he's a better football manager than me. I did my wild card on fantasy football recently, Alyson. Put Amad Diallo in my squad, left him on the bench. Just 13 points. Sat there after this Manchester derby. Hirsty, I'm going to let you go in just a second, but I wanted to ask you a final question on Guardiola, because I'm then going to open it up to the guys in the studio. Pep, right. Post-match press conferences, as I try and tell the listeners all the time, when I'm in the office editing, you guys ring in from the matches, what have the managers said and things. I've found Guardiola's reaction to these performances of late fascinating, and yesterday coming out with, I'm not good enough. Is a startling thing to say. And I just thought, for him saying that in relation to your point earlier about the players looking nervous, these top players looking annoyed and nervous, is there a sense, and we were discussing this on last Thursday's show, that yes, he signed this new contract, and of course you don't sack Pep Guardiola, you never do, but thinking about Jurgen Klopp's departure from Liverpool, where you had a top manager who just said, do you know what, actually, this has actually gone too far. I'm not suggesting that that'll happen in any time soon, but is there a sense with Guardiola that he's just so lost that is also playing a part with the players as well, that they're looking to their leader, their great leader, and going, God, he's saying he's not good enough. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, he's never experienced this before. That's why he looks so lost. And when he came out with that line yesterday, I was just a bit like, this is so out of character for him. The confident guy who's won everything before. He needs something. He either needs a new point of view being put to him. Whether he brings in I'm not suggesting it'll happen, because he seems pretty happy with his backroom staff. But you remember Sir Alex Ferguson always used to say, he always used to rotate he used to get rid of his assistant, didn't he, every 2 or 3 years, or change just to give a different viewpoint, or does he bring in? They have to sign someone in January, and at least one midfielder, I imagine. That would give him a bit of confidence. But it's certainly he's been really bullish in his press conferences up until about 2 weeks ago. Then we've seen a really kind of him bare his soul quite often recently. I think we're suddenly seeing a vulnerable Pep, and that has never been the case before. He's always been really bullish, really confident, and he's always really defended his players as well. And he said that again yesterday. I thought we played really well, but did he really believe that? He can't believe that. The football purist that he is can't actually believe that he's happy with Gundogan not passing the ball 5 yards to a teammate in space. So it's he's going through a world of proper turmoil at the moment. So we'll see how that plays out. But he's really suffering at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. A dull Manchester derby, but fascinating insight from Paul Hirst, the Manchester man. Thank you very much for joining us, Hirsty. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. Cheers.
There we go, guys. I said it was a boring game, but loads and loads for us to talk about. I'm just going to run you through a few stats that I've got that I thought summarised some of the points that Hirsty was making. It took until the 21st minute for either side to attempt a shot in this game. That came from Phil Foden. The longest wait on records, which is around 20 years, for the first shot in a Manchester derby in the Premier League. City scoring in the 36th minute, which is the game's first shot on target. City have lost only 4 of 105 Premier League home games in which they've been ahead at half-time under Pep Guardiola, with half of those defeats coming against Manchester United. And another point that Hirsty touched on briefly in there, in terms of average age, Manchester City starting 11, 28 years and 137 days, was the oldest named by either side in a Manchester derby since April 2017. Just a few points there, James, that you could either pick up on or just offer your own insights, because you were watching this game at home, thinking about some of the things Hirsty said. Go either way. Man United, Man City, Pep Guardiola. There's loads to talk about. What did you make of this game?
I'm fascinated on what we were saying about Pep Guardiola, because to me that is a live and interesting issue. You've got a manager who, of course, is, in my opinion, quite possibly the greatest club football manager. I mean, certainly of the 21st century. But he's not, by his own admission, he's not doing a good job at the moment. He's not getting the most out of the players at his disposal. What I'm really reminded of, what this current City spell really reminds me of, is the famous Borussia Dortmund season in Jurgen Klopp's last season at Borussia Dortmund, where in that sense of both the suddenness of a good team just suddenly not knowing where their next win is coming from, and also that kind of that incomprehension, that what is
Just shock, pure shock.
What is happening to us, but also how do we, not knowing how to get yourself out of it, how do you, it's hard to know how to stop losing when you've never had to know how to stop losing.
Yeah, that's true.
But the really interesting thing, obviously, and the point I was coming to is that we've seen two entirely different, managerial resolutions in those two situations. Klopp and Dortmund sort of mutually came to the decision that, things had run their course and, his voice had grown stale or whatever, and the messages just weren't going through. City have obviously extended Guardiola and are now in a position where we're in 2024 and City are playing pretty rubbish football. But Guardiola's contract now runs until the season that ends in 2027. That feels an awfully long time away. And look, Pep is an unbelievable manager. He's brilliant. And I think there's a big chance that he turns this around ultimately, somehow. That he, that he does what Sir Alex Ferguson was famously so brilliant at and finds a way to regenerate the team. But the longer this goes on, the more and more you feel maybe there's a chance that he doesn't. You know, maybe there's particularly because we're seeing so many signs of him sort of, talking about the fact that he's not sleeping well, or talking about the fact that, he's sort of, having stomach issues. Talking about the fact that
this is getting to him. This is on a very, very human level.
It's an incredibly demanding job. He's done it for an awfully long time. People burn out, cycles come to an end. And I just wonder if that decision to extend the contract now looks a little bit hasty in hindsight.
Tom Allnutt's here. Tom Allnutt's bursting. I said at the intro before you were here that you were going to burst into the studio, but you did it's like a kind of cat burglar. You just snuck in, shuffled in past the cameras.
Decorations had to be sort of removed,
Past it's fine, but you're here with us now and you can offer your views on Pep Guardiola.
Well, I was just going to say that maybe, the whole kind of premise of Pep staying, I think, was he felt he needed to stay because he felt he couldn't leave City in this precarious situation. That's been the narrative over the last few weeks, is that how could I leave at this point? I have to fix this myself. But at what point does that kind of start to shift, where if Pep starts to think that I wouldn't say so strongly to say that he's the problem, but if he thinks that he is no longer the person to fix it, then that doesn't add up anymore. And if he thinks I'm too tired, I haven't got the energy, I haven't got the solutions anymore, the players aren't listening to me, whatever that is, if he actually thinks the way to fix this is for there needs to be a fresh voice, then they might rethink it, right? I agree. They're never going to sack Pep Guardiola, but it seems to me not inconceivable, but that if this kind of run continues, in the summer he says, actually, you know what, someone else is.
Do you know what he reminded me of, everyone? Batman.
The Dark Knight. When he says, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that is the choice that these managers have faced, isn't it? You either leave waving to everyone like Jurgen Klopp did. Jurgen Klopp called it perfectly, didn't he? He was like, I've had enough. And, they won one trophy. They might have won a few more. But he bowed out. And, even now to the point where Liverpool can be at the top of the table, and still there's deluded Liverpool fans missing Jurgen Klopp. We won't get into that. But Pep Guardiola's thinking, gosh, this could be really difficult, Alyson. It could be Alex Ferguson. It could be regeneration. It could be 2.5 years. And at the end, he gets to walk out as the hero still. Or it could be 2 really difficult years, which ultimately end with him going, I can't do it anymore.
The way he's behaving now, I can't see him coping with 2 difficult years. It looks like he can't cope with 2 difficult weeks, to be honest. But whenever people say Pep Guardiola, I think it's been said 3 times on this show already, obviously the best manager we've ever seen, you will get people saying, but could he do it with Watford?
Yeah.
Could he do it with Coventry?
I'm actually shocked that you've bitten on that, actually. I didn't see that coming at all. I'm joking. Obviously, saw that coming a mile off, but yeah.
And this was his chance to show that actually I am capable of managing a situation. I don't just have a setup that was designed for me, the best players for my system, money is no object. He's been as managerial appointments go, his was the most spoiled. And this is the moment when surely you prove your worth as the best manager in the universe, because things are difficult.
Yeah.
Things that you've got an aging squad, you've got key injuries. These things happen to all managers, by the way. And the best ones are the ones that look at the jigsaw puzzle in front of them, rejig it, find a new system, bring in players from the academy. Jurgen Klopp did that with Liverpool, and they had a terrible injury crisis. And suddenly Liverpool were fielding players nobody had heard of, but because they have an excellent system at Liverpool, where the academy players play in the same system as the first team, they were able to slot in effortlessly. Why isn't this happening at City? Why are we seeing the same mistakes being made by the aging players in midfield?
Well, it's because they've sold all the best young players. That's why.
Well,
That's part of the problem.
well, exactly. But it just strikes me as a really important moment in the legacy of Pep, what he does next. Will they just spend their way out of it in the January transfer window? Possibly, but it'd be really nice to see him do more than just damage his skin and say he's not sleeping well and he's not good enough.
So you want the 2-year regeneration. You want him to show what James is talking about, what I'm talking about when I say, he's the greatest.
I mean, he might feel, the people close to him might be saying, "Come on, just take a break." But I think that will truly damage his legacy.
Yeah.
What's he achieved if he can't cope when the times are difficult?
But also, I mean, you look at the way Klopp handled it and Ferguson, they were both sort of coming downward a little bit. The trajectory was both, coming down. Ferguson, I think, knew that his kind of control of that era was definitely subsiding. I think the same with Klopp. We know that 2 years ago, was it, when they had that season with the midfield didn't have enough legs in it, and that was almost a similar season. But in both cases, they sort of found it within them to kind of have one last push, almost just to kind of like save a legacy, to say, right, Ferguson wins that last title and says, okay, now I'm done. Klopp, similarly last season, great season, says I'm done. And I wondered if Guardiola, it might not be a whole new rebuild where he thinks I'm going to build a whole new team with all these new young players, but maybe he thinks, okay, this is a survival season, and next season he just creates one last team to kind of finish it off.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Manchester United just to finish, because we're talking lots about Manchester City, and we do get lots of listeners, lots of you United fans out there who say, you never talk about us, only in the bad times. Hey, you won the game. Amad Diallo is great. But James, thinking about some of the points that Paul Hirst made there, both about Amad Diallo and Rubin Amorim, this kind of smiling assassin who comes out and charms everyone in the press conferences. And I'm the cynical editor, but I'm watching it on Sky Sports going, you've got the chat, mate. You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing, because he's smiling his way through the fact that he's dropped one of the most important players in Manchester United's recent history, and he's explaining it. And I'm going, what a good guy. He's just a good manager. It's all making sense. James, what have you made of his performances so far?
Yeah, I mean, I've said before, I think he's in the kind of public-facing part of the role. I think he's really good. Like, he's, very charismatic, very believable. And I thought that he, like, the answers that he gave about the Rashford and Garnacho situation were basically, like, quite good.
Yeah.
The way that he sort of, said we have kind of, minimum standards that we need to hit in terms of sort of, general sort of engagement and sort of, I think that was what he was driving at, right? Sort of, being on it in training, but also kind of stopping short of throwing them under the bus and saying that, it's not a disciplinary issue, next week, new page. I mean, I thought that was all that.
Well, you're going to the game on Thursday. Maybe you're going to see both of them, unleashed against Tottenham in the quarterfinals.
Maybe. I think generally as well, I think overall, like, it's obviously very, very early, but I think definitely I was at the game against Arsenal, which obviously ultimately they lost, and obviously they have this huge problem defending set piece corners in particular.
Which continued, of course. Yeah,
I think they've been I think they've set up in open play defensively quite well. I think they've been much harder to play through. They're obviously conceding, I think, far fewer shots than they were under Ten Hag, which was obviously the huge kind of unsustainable problem of Ten Hag's tenure. And I've not seen a lot of sort of signs of sort of, the kind of sort of the sort of systemic creativity of the 3-4-3 system going forward. Obviously, they scored 2 good goals yesterday, but neither sort of really kind of created by.
Yeah.
But I think he's, you kind of solve one thing at a time, don't you, as a new manager? And I think he's doing fine so far. The results haven't been kind of overwhelmingly good. They've sort of been a bit mixed, but overall, I think, and obviously, football is such an outcome-based sport, and this result just feels
Is a huge.
Well, exactly. If City had swept United aside 5-0, which was before kick-off was a thing that was going around people's heads. This could be the game that City come back, actually. Would you be saying such nice things about Amorim if, presumably Garnacho wore a garish Christmas jumper, he didn't like it, and he's dropped, and Rashford had tinsel in his hair or something, whatever it was, that would now seem really, really stupid. It wouldn't seem logical and good management and smiley and lovely.
But you don't like the idea that he's the standards, I guess, is the point. Whether we don't know exactly what the reasons are, but you don't like his point about the standards, and he made points as Paul Hirst said about.
They sound really grown up and insightful and fair when you've won. If they hadn't won, wouldn't we be saying, well, what are his priorities? Dress sense or getting it right on the pitch? That's what we'd have a completely different slant on it.
I wonder whether the dress sense is a little bit of misdirection. Who knows? But we will find out. Yeah, who knows? That is the big question, isn't it? That's the problem, Rubin. When you say things like this, we just sit around on a podcast speculating as to Christmas jumpers and things like that. I'm going to have to leave it there because we want to get in a jam-packed second half of the show.